All right, hi folks. Nick Tockert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Well, thanks for your patience. I know I'm about 3, which is something I don't normally do, but with all the internet coming in, we're going to get out what we can while we can. As I'm currently all by myself here, no one really's caring what I'm saying until they come on and say something. So we're going to talk, and this week's going to be a little different. Second, due to some problems, and we're still getting rolling, but. That's the joy of live TV, folks. Occasionally things go catastrophically in error. Well, my copy of The Simple Sword apparently got borrowed again. That happens when you write a good novel. You write it useful resource. It tends to walk when you're not looking at it. So this week, hi folks, whoever's here, great to see you. Be sure to mash that like button, which when I point is right there. I don't know where it is on your screen, but please be sure to hit that. And we're going to talk. This week, we're going to go a little off topic, in part because the book's not in reach, but it is what brings me to the table. We're going to talk about defensive tools in differing situations. What I mean, part of what I was talking about, and these guys are going to come up later because they are pretty much one of my all-time favorite utility products. If I had to talk about something I carried immediately after my neck knife, which for those who worry, it's still here. Don't get lost black on black. But, well, we'll get you more rounds. Hi. This is probably my second most useful item to carry, and these are some Fisker shears. They're stainless. I cannot remember the model for the life of me, but I've had these since I worked as a merchandiser for Home Depot. And these things are lifesavers. They'll cut through just about anything and just keep working. Everybody should have a pair. I'm going to probably be making a nice little sheath for these. I need to make a belt sheath, and it's been a long time since I've done anything like leather work, and I really need to do some leather work. So we're going to talk about these. We're going to talk about what they're good for, what they're better for, and why I think everybody should carry them. I will say this. We're approaching a time where carrying weapons may be frowned upon. It may be a very bad idea. Oh, I'm sorry. These have a feature where they come apart. And that's so that you can clean them. And they're, you can grip that safely. It's curved away from you. Nobody's going to get hurt with an item like this. It's a totally safe bug. But I was talking, and I'm going to put these back together. No, I do not believe, we have to be legal. So if they say no knives, okay, remember, no knives. We're not going to talk about scissors because most places don't care about you carrying scissors as a safety element. Okay? But we also have to talk about the validity of your training. What do I mean? Now, there are a couple schools of training, and pardon me, my tremendous thirst today. We're sitting at about 50% humidity and rising where I am right now as the storm goes to break. And I just came in from running around a little bit, so I'm still a little light sensitive. As soon as the sun goes down, the world will be a much better place for my pale blue eyes. But until then, we're going to keep going. Wow, I am just off the rails today. I want to talk, because I got some interesting messages. I've got some commentary about some of my more practical teaching, e.g., you're never unarmed as a theory. And I was planning to do a video. Really was. I'm like, okay, this week we'll talk about some practical stuff. We'll talk about games and better and mentality stuff. Now, part of what we're talking about is when you learn a skill, in my opinion, especially a martial skill, it needs to have it needs to have, like, I can't bring myself to wear the hat inside. I just, as bright practical skills, your skills should work. Okay. What you train with is what you'll do. What do I mean? You ever see a boxer get into a fight? What happens? Same thing happens. Hey man, I don't want to. Whoop. And it's funny because you can see a dude go doop 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 doop. I'm a normal dude. I said, pop you up. Pop, pop. Hands up high. Bob and weave. Every boxer. I love when, like, die-hard karate guys, especially like the Shadokan karate, very hard art guys, get threatened in a situation. And I don't want that to sound like I want them to be threatened, but it's amusing to me to see because and I cannot remember the word for the shout of intimidation that a lot of schools teach, but it amuses me. So, you know, this barking thing, and a lot of different schools will do that. It's just stay away from me. It's like a last warning, and they fall into their whatever their stance is, and they're gonna go and foot's gonna come up, the usual. Same with any martial art. Why do I say this? I teach swordsmen. Okay, I do a lot of things. I teach a lot of weapons, but primarily I teach swordsmen. And swordsmen, when threatened, are going to do the same thing. There's a running joke about. There was a book that put out, knowing who you're in a bar fight with. It was an article. I don't remember where. I loved it, but they said depending on what you see a guy do, how they stand, will tell you how to identify what kind of threat you're dealing with. And the boxers versus the different styles. Wrestlers tend to squat and get wide. They almost take that looks like an umpire in the middle of a fight. Let me see if I can bring this down because I'm kind of rocking my chair today. Real low. Wide, strong base. Neck muscles work. I'm in a mood. But, they're going to do that. They want to control. They want all the angles. That tells you a lot. You ever see an SCA guy, even unarmed, SCA heavies do something weird where this arm, it's not a punch like you're expecting. This arm reflexively cocks here. This arm goes here, and they come down. And it's funny to see an unarmed guy do that. This is a problem. This is because there should be a stick here. There should be a shield here. And the thing is, the shoulder shield bash thing, we don't shield bash. Especially, they might not, but Tuchuk will. Is going to come, and it's a short-range explosive energy. That's there. That still turns into a very strange hammer strike. Bam! One of those things, sometimes it's fun to see SCA and karate. The SCA heavy karate crossover takes that hard chop and turns it into this curled thing that just nails people. Why? Because they're supposed to be 3 feet of stick at the end of it. Understanding that what you train, whatever your sport, whatever is your muscle memory. And when you're startled, muscle memory will always kick in. Whatever you train it to be. And if you don't have any, it will do something stupid like, ah! Have you ever seen somebody who's like, the boom hits by boom? Somebody drops a big glass pad, it explodes, unexpected firework goes off. Watch what people do. And that will tell you a lot about them. They'll tell you about how they train. Every single cop I've ever met does the exact same thing. And it's funny because every officer of the law, okay, I want you, I focus, ignore, well, belly yelp. They're going to do this. They're going to be standing however they're standing. Their foot's going to move back. Their hand's going to go here. And they'll usually put this hand to what they're doing. They're gaining, they're maintaining distance, a lot of times stepping slightly offline. Okay? The hand is out. No, no, no. This projects and pushes more distance. A lot of understanding combat in any hand-to-hand, certainly any controlled tactical situation like an officer of law might face or anything else is, I need to gain this much. I want this territory. Boom. This is, believe it or not, this is the first step in any military, any tactical situation is to establish a perimeter. Now, two things are happening. Perimeter is established. They are gaining territory. It's a forceful motion. So assuming that a righty has gone down to the hip. What lives at a cop's hip, folks? That's right, their firearm. Gain control, retain the weapon. Everything comes from a situation of control and retained weapon. That's what they're hardwired. I think I've seen 2 cops not do that in the entire time I've known them when something goes bang. One was a guy who went on to do things in places. You know what I mean? He dabbled in copdom, went back military, did stuff. The other actually was funny because it confused. I had to ask questions because it was at my buddy Jim's wedding. His pastor, really interesting fella. He was dancing like somebody who'd done a lot of dancing, and it got my interest. And there was a noise, and I watched the flinches, and I had heard he was a law enforcement officer, and there was no retention flinch. I'm like, oh. Now, anybody who's been trained heavily in undercover, that's one of those things they have to break of them because it's a great way for people to test if that's a cop in the room. It happens a lot. If you're, because I'm talking about this because we're going to talk about training. We're going to talk about how it overlaps. But watch some of the videos of the protests. I find them tactically fascinating. And being me, I look at both sides because I'm looking at it aside from the morality, aside from the situation, it's complex. It is also at its root a protest where police enforcement is a chance to observe human behaviors, and I find that fascinating. I like knowing how people are going to move before they move, and the only way to do that is to pay attention. And that's a type of training. It's training your mind. It's training your eye. It's what I consider the next step of mindfulness. Mindfulness. I've got a lot going on my mind this week. I've got a lot spinning. I've been very busy. So you have to bear with me as I parse it out. When you're looking at the mindfulness approach and why tactics, what you do, mindfulness, it all feeds into the same concept. It's the same set of ideas. And we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about the mechanics, at least for the first maybe half hour, or until commentary starts, of what happens in physical altercations. And then I want to talk a bit, at least the second half hour, of the philosophical side to it. Because there's a philosophical, there's even a, dare I say, spiritual side to understanding any martial art and understanding violence and conflict. It's a complex subject. And I know this is off topic, and maybe next week I'll go back to a little more formal, but there's things percolating in my mind, so I'm going to talk them over with you. And I hope you find this interesting. If you don't and you're watching, comment. If you do, comment anyway, so I know I'm on a page that matters. But I'm saying all this comes back around. Mindfulness. You have to be mindful not only of your situation, where you are, but how you react to it. And you have to decide, is this appropriate or is it something I want to change? This is the process that allows somebody to control their anger. This is the process that allows somebody who's not angry but able to get the energy to deal with a physical altercation. What? We're going to get into that because fighting mad is never a good idea. But some people who are very kind have trouble getting over the hurdle. It's part of the lizard brain of they don't want to hurt their friends, they don't want to hurt anybody. And to them, sometimes it's difficult to train. Now, it's very easy for somebody who's very competition based, very, assertive. Even those who seek conflict are drawn to it. But for the people who are naturally, they're either more peacemakers or they're just non-confrontational. They need to understand how conflict and physical conflict work. So we're talking about that. And like I said, this is a few spikes of sociology, a few spikes of psychology, a lot of observation. But you have to watch. You have to watch yourself. And what you train is what you'll do. Part of that is why I'm so big on training and approaching people who do a lot of LARP combat or a lot of, I don't want to say unopposed. 1 second. Babe, can you turn the volume down? But, sorry, I don't want to get copyright struck. But, sorry. The situation, sorry. Woo! I'm waiting, anyhow. When you're dealing with conflict and you aren't of a conflict mind, there may be a hesitation to react. Hello, Glenn. Glad to see you. So what you have to do is be aware of your situation and have your body trained in a way that responds. Now, again, getting back to LARP, if you're playing a game that is maybe LARPing with the buffers, anything that gives you unnaturally light weaponry or motions. If you're doing a martial art and you aren't practicing with a non-compliant partner, you could be setting yourself up to devastating failure. And that's very, very crucial to what we do. Okay? And that's why my approach is different. I just ask why. I want to know, why do we move a certain way? You look at a manual. Boom. What are you gaining? What are you fixing? Everything should I'm sorry. We'll be right back. Sorry about that, folks. I hope we still have folks here. Okay, when we're talking about martial arts and we're talking about responses, the response has to meet the situation. And if you're training in something that doesn't give you a realistic opposed balance, if your partner's compliant, you can do things that you just can't do in a non-compliant setting. I've seen a lot of tosses, I've seen a lot of throws, I've seen a lot of strikes that on somebody would be devastating, oh, you won points, whatever. If it doesn't work realistically, if it doesn't kick in and let you do what you need to do to survive and profit, how do I put this? It doesn't work. So always, when you look at what you're doing, the style has to either, every action in any conflict either removes a weakness or builds on a strength. If it doesn't take away a weakness or a threat, doesn't give you an advantage, that's what I'm looking for, it's not worth doing. This is a sort of efficiency. And it's funny, a lot of things in life, if you stop and look, I see my chicken's upset because I got loud. If you stop and look, you're going to find a lot of things work that way, where the things that drain you are the most are the things that don't give you an actual advantage and don't take away a disadvantage. And I'm finding myself facing some of that a lot. So that's very important. We have to, when we're developing what we do, what we teach our bodies to respond, it has to be realistic. It has to be, in my opinion, minimalistic, because muscle memory is reliable, but it's not big on complexity. I'm not quite one of those guys who it's like, it has to be gross motor skills. No, muscle memory can be quite fine. Think about the last time you walked up to an ATM. Did you have to think about the number, or did your fingers just deftly beep, 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 beep? I don't know how many people's phone numbers I could only tell you if I was looking at a dial pad, and I could be like, boop, 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 boop. Oh, that's what it is. Your body becomes a shortcut. So, when you're looking at sword styles or any weapon styles, it needs to be valid. It needs to work. I'm sorry I knocked some things over when I had to get up. Stick will move the same as sword. I need a stick so I don't fall down. I should make sure that anything I train in can be effective with a stick, not as effective. And that's a good thing. In defensive applications, you don't necessarily want something to be as effective as it could theoretically be. What I'm saying is, if I go out and I train to kill people, which is fine, some of my favorite people on earth are veterans who happen to have that skill set. That will keep them alive, and it will stop the bad guy from doing whatever the bad guy's doing. But it has problems. The problem I find in this sort of situation is, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a cop. Okay? If you get in a physical altercation, one, you need to call the cops, and you need to call the cops first. Why? Because a lot of bad guys, and I've heard about this a lot, even attempted robberies, will call the cops, lie, because it's statistically proven cops tend to believe the first person who calls. So that's something, if you have one of these guys, which it's blocked up, but you can get a piece of it in my cell phone. Sorry, it's still wired for when I check message later. You need to dial. That is part of strategy. So that needs to be almost reflex, okay? You need to control it. And control means, on an emotional level, neither letting anger cause you to overexert, nor letting natural passivity cause you to hesitate or under, It's a fine balance. And to do that, part of it is you just have to practice. And you have to practice whatever you do with a partner who, within safe bounds, is going to resist. And not always with the same style. I know so many people, and they're Western martial arts guys especially. They fight one style. They train one style. They oppose one style. Classical fencers, I'm sorry, not classical fencers, collegiate fencers have defined the art of how they fight so narrow, so hyper focused that millimeters count, and it's all the same game. That's the game. A lot of the historical fencers are so worried about being. I found this in the SCA. I found this with some HEMA guys I've talked to. They're worried about being historically accurate, matching the panels. The panels are good suggestions in just about any fight book. In any manual, you're going to find some good suggestions. Some are better than others. But if you don't test it against anything but its style, you don't understand its strengths and weaknesses. You know, it's like, I love Aikido. I'm not a guy, I've not been trained in Aikido, but watching the motions, talking to Aikido guys, playing with them somewhat, Aikido's cool. But Aikido doesn't always work against non-Aikido. So you need to generalize in a defensive stance. Now, I am also everybody knows I'm all about weapons training. I'm all about weapons training because it's what I know. I have a lot that I personally, in a self-defense category, have to adjust for. Part of it is being out of shape due to medical reconstruction kind of things. I am fighting some stuff. Part of it is simple size, you know. The fighting style of somebody who's 5'2", 5'6", 5'7" like me is different than 6 foot plus, especially if that guy is in an environment where the majority of people are 6 foot plus. You know, hobbits fighting hobbits is one thing. We're going to get down and scrap. Hobbit giants, you get a different ball game. And there's different mentalities. And that gets important too. That's part of the mindfulness, the pulling it all back together. There's a lot of static, a lot of information. A lot of people get distracted because they got their felt, you know, I need an object. My phone. If you're walking through life and you're staring at your screen, you're missing everything around you. They used to teach when I learned to drive, you never more than a couple seconds. Second here. Look at the speedometer, back at the road. Rearview mirror, back at the road. Road is primary. What about when you're walking? How many people do you see walking? And you know, back in my day, there were still people with newspapers, books. Now it's phones. Oblivious. The first step of any defensive system is being aware you need a defensive system. Threat identification. Well, what kind of threats are you identifying on a day-to-day, Nick? Where do you live? Let's see. Threats like trip hazards, threats like cars, threats like dogs, threats like, I don't know, glass doors. How many times have you seen this? Somebody's flop, and they go right into a glass door because they haven't paid attention. Ooh, I just hit a button and my computer just tried to give me the internet back code. Scary. I don't need that. I need more caffeine though. Okay. How do you get there? What is all this rambling about? You have to be aware of where you are. Boom. I am sitting roughly in the center of my room. My window is about 4 feet from me. My reach is close to 3 feet, so I'll need to move roughly 1 foot. There's a little bit of blur, but I know expressing verbally what I know physically gets dicey. I know I can't get fast out the door without going around the hook of the corner of my table stepping over something, things like that. I know what my front door sounds like. I know roughly how long it takes to open it, how long it takes to come through the front door versus where I am. I've paid attention. So you have to be mindful of your surroundings. You have to record and build patterns in your head so that you understand. This is just like standard fencing. Okay, you put me in a list field, I need to know my reach. Optimally, I need to know my reach with any given implement. We'll pull out the pokey stick of science here. Okay, I now know this is about a finger's width. I can poke. It's about an 8-inch stick, maybe 7. Anyhow, I have this nice little stick. I now know my reach with it. I know what I can't reach. I can slash at this screen all day, and I'm not going to tear my nice computer up because I understand how long this stick is. I know how long my stride is. It's about 2.5 feet. I have a slightly truncated stride, so it's a little shorter than that. That means if I count steps, I can figure out how far I'm going. That's kind of cool. If I know my usual walking rate, which is about 1.5 miles an hour, again, slow, but I'm gimpy. Hey, I now know a lot about what I'm doing, and from there I can extrapolate a lot. That's data. That's data that gets stored. If I have that and I'm paying attention, for example, I know I'm not running anywhere for any length of time. I have a slight sprint. It is not pretty, and it's enough to usually get me around a building corner. And then I may have to pay for it if I push much harder. Could I go longer? Sure, but my recovery at the end will be longer, and that might be a hazard. You have to think this way. And you notice I know about me. Mindfulness is not always external. Mindfulness is internal as well. What does that mean? For example, I know I wake up groggy. I tend to, and part of my condition, even though I use a machine, before I get my meds, before I get some caffeine in me, like many of you, I'm a little groggy. That means I don't try to go fast. I don't try to make decisions unless absolutely necessary. I give myself the time I know I need. What if something goes wrong? If something goes wrong throughout my day and I have some problems, emotionally something triggers me, I'm only human-ish, I might be angry. The trick is being aware I'm angry and taking steps, increasing your breathing, bringing it down, controlling yourself. Also, I might be sad. People talk about controlling anger a lot. Well, don't go starting fights. Don't go out mad. Don't drive angry. Don't drive sad. Don't drive distracted. Because if you're in here, which is a neat place to visit, you're not aware of what's out there. And that is crucial for fencing. It's crucial for survival. It's crucial for a lot of things. When I teach melee strategy, I have a chart, and it's in my book, which is currently AWOL, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's basically concentric lines. You want to control the space for as far as you can comfortably reach. That is your last bubble. Nothing should be in that bubble you don't want, or things have gone really wrong. That's the first thing you have to deal with. The next is the extent of your arm itself, which, in the case of the pokey stick of science, is only a few more inches with a little bit of give because I don't want to overextend. But with my cane of awesomeness here, now I've got a couple feet. Control that circle. The next circle that needs to be controlled or at least understood starts to overlap with perception, because perception works outward. You need, as far as you can see, you need to have a rough idea of what's going on first. Boop, 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 boop. That's why. If there's something over there, bing, 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 bing. And as it's closer, you better have that item, whatever comes up, like the ping on one of those sonar movies, identified. And we're transitioning into the mental, and I will get a little more on topic later, but this threat assessment is not taught. Okay, I don't see it in books. I don't see it taught often as an idea. It's like what a lot of, especially martial arts or fencing manuals are. So and so does this, you do that. I want to try to teach people. Yeah, there's so and so does this, you do that. But I want you to be able to look at somebody just by and pay attention and think, hey, he's likely to start a fight. Maybe I need to cross the street. Maybe that'll provoke him. Maybe I need to be a little more assertive. I find positive assertion to be a wonderful tool. If somebody spooks me, it's, hi, oh, I'm sorry, you're not Mike. You look just like Mike. Now you've done some things. By that, you're now giving a chance to, by talking to somebody, you're paying more attention. When you talk to somebody, they become more real. They become less blurred by the bystander effect. They're not part of the scenery. They're an entity. And they know that you have engaged them. You've had a chance to look at their face, look at their moves. This is unnerving for a lot of criminals because that means you're more likely to be able to accurately describe them. And anyone who's in conflict with you is going to realize that. Plus, it's positive. Hi. I prefer people to think of me as, hey, that's that nice guy. If you can get, and I'm not talking internet nice guy weirdness. I'm talking like, that's just he waves at everybody. He's kind of goofy but harmless. If you can get the majority of the world to think you are goofy but harmless, you have won major victories. Because what's the point of messing with somebody who's goofy but harmless? There will still be people, but if they can get through that field of it, they have a lot of intent. They're not randomly picking you usually, and that's that tool. The awareness of yourself, how you're projecting. I'm not saying be deceptive per se. Sun Tzu is. Sun Tzu says, when you are strong, feign weakness. When you're weak, feign strength. This is a brilliant core philosophy. My attitude is similar. It's okay to feign happiness tactically. Hi. It's okay to feign fear at times. What do I mean? You want to know the stance I was taught usually. Now, people lovingly say that CPI, crisis prevention intervention, is hug fu. And it kind of is. I mean, it's an insane approach for an insane situation. In no other attitude is somebody actively trying to harm, possibly trying to kill you in the moment. And your job is to not only not let them hurt you, but not allow them to be hurt in the process if it's not all scientifically possible. Wow. It takes a lot. Hey, I don't want trouble. You see this a lot. I don't want trouble, man. No. Hey, you're right. I'm wrong. I have no problem being wrong about whatever it takes to de-escalate a situation in the short term. What I mean, my views, my morals, my beliefs are rock hard. I know what I believe. I've spent years thinking about it, and unless given actual, scientific evidence, I'm pretty. When it comes to what I think is right and wrong, and I'm not talking about scientific fact. Scientific fact is scientific fact. If it's disproven, that becomes the scientific fact. That's how science works. But morality, what I believe is right, what I believe is wrong, I've thought about it. I've looked in, looked out, watched, waited, processed. And I kind of have a system I believe in. It's a messed up mix of morality and theological norms and social norms, but at least it's an examined life. One of the greatest threats to anyone is to live an unexamined life. If you don't know why you are the way you are, good, bad, or indifferent, something needs to be checked on. The same thing happens in defense. It goes into what's your goal. Now, there are some people, my goal is to go out there and win fights. Go beat the other dude. And that's their thing. My problem is I see unnecessary conflict as it's just a series of threats that need to be neutralized. Being, if I can avoid the physical altercation, that avoids the damage of the physical altercation. That avoids the legality of the physical altercation. That avoids the medical ramifications of the physical altercation. People don't think about that. It isn't just a fight. Maybe in the 80s, early 90s, in school, you could get away with that. But now it's not. You have to be mature enough to realize. First off, if I get into an altercation, if I'm fighting somebody, close fists or as close as mine will do right now, what happens? At the minimum, your ultimate goal is maybe I've applied enough pain to stop them from doing whatever they're doing. That's okay. Pain. I am very pro pain and pro pain accessories, but pro pain versus injury, and then I'm pro injury versus fatality. What I mean, I would rather suffer embarrassment, than engage somebody if I don't have to. And we'll talk about have tos because there are times. I mean, a lot of people right now are thinking, Nick, wow, sword master and coward. And I do talk a lot about applied cowardice. I do that. It seems hyperbolic, but it's hyperbolic to fight, my inner systems of belief. I don't like being a coward. I don't like thinking I am. But sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. My man Falstaff said that. And if you're going to engage, what are your victory conditions? This is a gamer concept, victory conditions. I run, one of the things I do is I do tactics games. And in a tactics game, like Big Stumpy Robots or trying to think of ones more people know, BattleTech, Warhammer, any game where you're simulating combat with miniatures, you have victory conditions. Now, some it's kill all the other dudes, woo! But a lot of times it's survive this long or acquire this item, whatever. My victory condition is to go home safely with my family without threat of legal or medical entanglements, with the same number of holes in me I started the day with. Absolutely. Okay, Glenn said the best choice is always the stance with the best tactical advantage. Sometimes that exactly, but you won't find a lot of instructors who are willing to talk retreat, in part because their business plan is built on what you do if you don't retreat. And if I made not another cent doing what I do, it would be tragic. But if that was the trade-off to get everybody to be like, nope, and never get in an unnecessary conflict again, I'd take it in a heartbeat. And I've thought about that's not a shallow conversation. you need the best ways to prevent it. Like, hey, that you look at somebody and they're showing all the signs of being mad. They got walking road rage. Don't get near them. Just go somewhere else. The gut knows, and you have to cultivate it. You have to pay attention and give it data, what feels right, what doesn't. But like they found there's a complex nervous system, and very recently in your digestive tract that literally is a lot more complex than they ever thought for hundreds of years. And I've been watching this for some time, and it's hard to get a hold of some story, information-wise. But they're starting to realize the reason we feel threats, and we always say in our gut, is there's some kind of almost organ of processing that's tied to that. It's really fascinating. And I could, that could be wrong, but that's something I've heard and it makes sense. But you got to listen to it and you got to train it. So if that says this is the wrong place, very little is worth engaging past that. This is a bad idea. If your gut says something is a bad idea, don't do it. That's not cowardice. That's listening to your response. Okay. Nick, you've been talking about unnecessary. What's necessary violence? What's a necessary conflict? Well, this will confuse. Warfare is technically a necessary conflict. If you sign on the dotted line to seek out and engage the enemy as part of your job, then that is your job. And you should be trained, obviously, to do so with minimal things. But we can't hold people who have been trained to that to social norms after that without a transition. And that connection between what they are trained to do and be in a combat situation, what they're trained to do and be in a civilian situation, there has to be a phasing. And I am personally disappointed with the transition that is currently going. Because you find people who come out of the military, and that's what they've known, and they don't know what to do. Now, sometimes that overlaps with the police. The police are acting more and more like a military, and their training is more militaristic. So you start getting more militaristic responses. That's not. I'm not forgiving it. I'm also not necessarily condemning the source of it. I'm saying it has to be addressed. I have, my political views, but then I have my sociological and psychological sort of observations. And I can say something is wrong. And a lot of people can say, this is wrong, and they're correct. But the problem is, if you find something that is wrong, there's an obligation to try to figure out how to fix it. And if you don't know, that's fine. Admit you don't know, but seek those who might. That's part of, I think, mindfulness too. Mindfulness of your limitations, mindfulness of the strengths of others, and how they can interrelate to make the whole stronger than it would be alone. Complex stuff. I know, guys. I'm on a run today, and it's not where I expected to go with this week's conversation. But I also don't have a lot of people, so we're going to go with what we got. So tactical assessment. Graduated response. If somebody tries to mug me, and I can talk them out of it, yep, a civilian de-escalating? Yes, de-escalate. If I can dissuade, I don't like to start with intimidation, because once you go there, you can't get nice back. I always start with nice. Always, always, always start with nice. You don't want to do this, man. Come on. I'm calm. Let's just bring it down and be calm about it. Now you'll notice, as I'm talking, part of my training is I'm gesturing with my hands a little bit. You'll notice what I said at the very beginning of this video, the cops, hand comes out, hard force, gun retention, property. Soft force, hey, I don't, my body language is telling you I'm stooping. This is primate body language. I don't want trouble. Now, that can instigate some people. Some people will take that as an invitation. So you have to be able to, but I will provide it if necessary. And to hear the voice as a weapon. The voice goes from, hey, I don't want trouble. My voice is calm, it's soft. Hey, very mellow. I'm good, you're good. And now it's not. I've had situations where being able to switch to a commanding, not yelling, but projecting, putting oomph, putting intent behind your words. This tells them this is a different critter. And it's another layer of, if an altercation gets to physicality, as much as I train it, and as much as I say you need to train so that your mind should be steering the wheels. Like, body, don't do nothing yet. Now, the body has certain overrides. These are called reflexes. Reflexes are system overrides that your body has because your brain missed something. Your conscious mind isn't tracking fast enough that dude's punching you. But your body's like, dude, whoop, no. Oh. Now, this can sometimes cause for social faux pas. And that's that point of social faux pas. E.g., you drop something loud and everybody who has a gun's hand goes to the gun. You now know where everybody's gun is. But that's the mechanics of how you get to that. That's important. Training in such a way, there are layers. Okay. Why you're training, how you train, what it does. I have an off again, on again relationship with Tai Chi. Tai Chi, really, Nick? Bear with me. What does it do? Great for centering, great for physical health, great for alignment. It's one of those that helps me step out of more of a depressed state. When life gets hard, it's a tool. What else does it do? Because if you're going to do the same motion over, it isolates muscle groups better than most things I found. Training for perfection, which means slow, arduous, my motion needs to be exactly, is one of the best ways to gain it. And I actually have modified that approach for how I personally drill and train for fencing. Used to drive people nuts because I stopped being fast. I got too injured and I'm just not fast anymore. I'm fat and I'm gimpy and I'm slow. Watch you move, watch you walk. I'm not quite a turtle, but I'm not moving any too fast. So I have to know the timing ahead. Shot comes in. I need to know sometimes I know people are throwing a shot before they've decided to. Is that precog? No. It's just reading the body language. Okay? And that's accomplished by paying attention. I don't know. I've considered writing another book, maybe after The Strong Sword, about this level of things, where it starts to affect both the physicality and the mentality and even the spiritual. If it's something you guys think I should do, let me know. I'm curious. But Tai Chi's good for that. And yeah, that you could talk for people who've studied metaphysics and stuff about energy flow and all that. The biology versus where all those fields come together. But what it's really good is for understanding your muscle groups. And while you're paying that much attention, you're not thinking about anything else. So the noise in the back of your mind just shuts up. When I'm training and I'm really going, a lot of times it's not fast. And I've had people, what did you need to, and I do occasionally do speed drills where it's like, I want to go, oh, because this is what people love. They want to see you. Okay. You do that as a body once you're loose to build up that sort of explosive speed. You want things to happen very quickly. Now you watch that blurry sequence and you talk about, when I talk about maintaining an A-frame, fencing, deflecting things. Look how tight that is. I'm just minimal, just enough. Because I've learned exactly where just enough is. How did I do that? Did I do it by going fast? No, I did it by going slow. Over and over. It's a very simple exercise. All it is pairing out from the center line out. Boom, boom, boom. You sit and you do this. Do it in front of the mirror or in front of a camera like I am, so you know you're stopping just past the silhouette of your body. I can close my eyes. I'm still right where I need to be. Why? Because I've sat and done the time. People I want fast. You can't. There's a kind of triad in acquisition, okay? And this is of skills, of even items. You want something done. You want it fast, good, cheap. And I could tell you, in this universe, you could have something fast and cheap. You can learn a defensive style fast and cheap. And you can learn a fast defensive style, but it won't be good. I mean, it's minimal. That's good and fast, but it won't be cheap. And you can learn one that's good and cheap, but it won't be fast. So what have I done? I'm all about that route. Time. Invest the time, because that's natural. There are some systems that are, but they come at a price, and the price isn't monetary. When I say cheap, it's the difference between hard and soft. I found that it's faster to learn a hard style. Okay, what I mean, styles that focus, and this is mostly open-handed, it's whatever, on hard strikes, fast hard strikes, bam, bam, that defends you, quick, bam, 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 bam. But it comes at a price. The cheap price of being able to defend yourself and do it fast is the snapping motion on the tendons. It's the pop, 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 pop. And you will see it in the way old men walk. Somebody's a martial artist, okay? Any style. Look for the way the old men of that style move. You could spot like an old hard, especially 80s approach, 70s approach era karate guy a mile away. There's damage that's done to the legs. There's damage that's done to the joints because they're hitting so fast. It's like the calluses that certain hard arts get never go away. So the price is flexibility, but it makes you strong, makes it fast. Soft arts don't often make you as strong, and they certainly don't come as fast. But the old man can still move. And it's how you approach it. You can approach a hard art slowly and softly. Train slow, learn fast is one of those things, and that applies to everything. You want control on your motions. Your thrusts need to be smooth. I would rather you spend, oh, I did 10,000 shots a night. Okay. How long did it take you? Because I'd rather have you do less, but every shot. Because they say practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent is more accurate. What you train yourself, and that's funny because it gets back to the mind again. How you train yourself to think, how you will think. What you train yourself to do is how you'll do. And if you're like, yeah, you're all over the place, but look how fast I am, but you're not learning the slow, controlled, tempoed. You're not learning the control. You're just learning speed. And speed without control just leads to car wrecks. You know what I mean? I don't know. This is all. I was asked earlier to talk about my original plan for this video had nothing to do with this philosophy. It had to do with discussing improvised weapons, legality, and never being unarmed. And I was really thinking about it. Then, dang if my dear friend Trelena didn't post the thing of Doug Marcaida doing something very similar almost at the same time. People who don't know who Doug Marcaida is. There are many people who train martial arts. And many people have a philosophy behind it. Doug Marcaida is a gentleman who trains a lot of Filipino martial arts. He does Kali, he does Scream Sticks. Pretty much the patron saint of the karambit, if you ask me. No. This guy, okay? Karambit. I have to get this on every episode just to tweak Steve. But one thing he says, and is are you never unarmed? And if you have techniques and you've trained them slow, your body knows. Your body will recognize what you put in the hand without you thinking about it. Because the body only thinks in terms of what an item responds, not what it means. This is a flare by Paper Paint. If anyone were to ask me about my favorite pen ever, this is it. Some debate whether I like the 0.4, some debate whether I like the 0.7. I could have both, and my favorite items. A Sharpie permanent marker is another one. I absolutely adore these things. I almost carry them with me everywhere with like a mechanical pencil. It's part of my travel art kit. My mind registers this as a pen. This is something for drawing and writing, maybe telling stories. It's it's a magic wand of experience. In my right hand. My left hand it can be too, because I'm ambidextrous. But it's also something else. Pointy stick of science. Huh. Grips a little. You close your eyes, you feel something. Grips narrow, but relatively strong. Projects about an inch out. It's light, but it'll do the trick. That means if I were to make a downward thrust with this and apply that part to the side of somebody's neck, temple, the sweet spot in the jaw near the ear, it would have devastating effect. This is a Karambit. This Karambit trainer, but I'm not terribly fond of them. Edge weapon designed to flow with a certain set of natural motions in a concealed build matter. Muscle memory. I know what that is. These are Fisker scissors. These are my work scissors. I used to carry them every day. I find myself missing them. I may make a holster just to sheath kind of thing to hold them. It's interesting I say holster because of the grip is more, my brain goes pistol grip. Isn't that funny? Scissors. Huh. Grab it. Muscle nose. Broken scissors. Hmm. Hmm. Not a weapon. Don't carry weapons. Weapons are dangerous. Stick. Stick is good. I get asked why I don't carry a sword more often. Like, oh, Nick, would you go out in public carrying a sword? If I thought I needed to carry a sword in public, I'd probably carry a gun, which I don't have the legality to do yet, or the financial means to do, so I'm probably not going to for a while. Maybe. We'll see. That doesn't. I might carry a stick, because I need a stick. In fact, if you pay attention, this is a lanyard. And I really believe that the Republic would have won the war if the Jedi had discovered this amazing piece of hyper-futuristic technology, which is, in this case, paracord, because it's great. And it has sentimental value. The lanyard actually has sentimental value because I set it up the last time I saw one of my dear friends alive. I was working on this while I was talking to him. But stick. Now, it's tied to me. It's tied to me so I don't drop it because my hands drop things sometimes. Nerve damage. Neurological damage. Woo! You don't have epilepsy in the 80s. Take the meds and not have neurological damage, in my humble opinion. Certainly in my humble experience. So, pistol grip I can do. Stick. Think I can make this go? Lightweight. And if I use this to defend myself, I've used my walking cane. I'm not going to go, yeah, I'm starting trouble. Yeah, trouble. Like some kind of sand person from Star Wars. But if I have to do an adjustment to someone with my cane to escape, I'll do it. And I will do it without malice and without excess. It's necessary. Having a self-defense plan. It's like, but Nick, you carry this. Here's the problem with this. I love this thing. And as a tool, it is probably my favorite tool I've ever carried. But do you know what happens if I deploy this in a self-defense manner? Two things. One, in the short term, they won't realize it. Everything I've seen, everything I've studied, most stabbings aren't, because of the adrenaline of the situation, aren't even recognized as a deterrent in the first 30 seconds, minute longer of a conflict. So unless I hit somewhere where they do an anime bleed out, they might not even feel it right away. Okay. Well, still, all you have to do is live that long and they're alive. They're dead, you're not. Then what? Cops show up. Hi, cops. He tried to rob me. He said he had a gun. I knifed him. Maybe he didn't. I just knifed an unarmed guy. He's dead. There's spiritual issues. There's religious issues. There's legal issues. Hey, I don't. In this world, I don't know what he had, but if his blood is all over me, that's a whole bloodborne pathogen issue. Could I do that offensively? Absolutely. Would it be practical at least as a first shot? No, that's way last ditch. And harder to explain. The cane is like, well, what happened? Well, he took a swing at me. I had my cane because it's tied to my hand. And, muscle memory. bopped him upside whatever, and then I hobbled away as fast as I could. That means I'm less likely to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. We live in a world where sexual abuse is state-sponsored and supported in jail. That's considered part of the deterrent. Thanks, but no thanks. Not including the loss of liberty and, legal ramifications, not seeing my family, being locked in a cage, probably health because they wouldn't want me to have my breathing machine. No, I don't want to kill anybody if I can avoid it. And avoiding it should always be the key. The key. But there are things in life you can't avoid. One scenario is somebody coming through your door. Somebody tries to force their way or does force their way through the door. That is a necessary fight. They have brought through extreme aggression their presence and threat into a place they have no business being. And then it's every human's right to defend their home, in my opinion, with it, whatever means are necessary and an extreme sudden measure. I have a small child. If I get hurt, he's not that small, but anymore. He's growing like a weed. But if I get hurt, he can't. He can't do what I can do. My wife is formidable, but she shouldn't have to do what I can do. And is that old-fashioned? Yes. Is that possibly chauvinistic? Yes. Is it hardwired down to my blood cells? Absolutely. So you train for that scenario. But at the same time, I train to fight what's in here. I train to control the anger, to control the fear. So I think it was Plato. I'm a little rusty on my great issues, but who said the excess or is it shortage? We're going to say shortage. There's a better word for it. Excess or absence. We'll say absence. Excess or absence of any given virtue is a vice. Is wrong. What do you mean? Confidence is good. Okay? Confidence is fine. Too much confidence is egotism. It's arrogance. Too little is inaction. Bravery is a great one. That's what applies. Bravery is a virtue. Courage is a virtue. Too much courage is foolhardiness. This is a mix of aggression and excess. Too little is cowardice. You need just the right amount. Hello, John Miner's joining us. We've been kind of philosophical this week, John. I was going to do a video on improvised weapons, but I found Doug Marcaida did one that was better than what I was planning to do in like 2 minutes as a TikTok joke. So I kind of had to shoot for the hip. Now, as always, if anybody has a point, a comment, something they want me to go on about, I will be happy to go on that. But I work on that on a rough guide. But until John pipes in with something he wants to discuss, I'm gonna just keep prattling because there's a lot that's been going on. Okay, a lot of threats, and people are addressing them but losing sight of others. A wonderful, well, not wonderful, but an accurate, timely example right now is the COVID-19 threat and the police brutality / Black Lives Matter. Wherever you stand on that particular spectrum, it's a series of threats. And what happened is a lot of the people in America looked at one and forgot the other. On both sides of it. There are a lot of people who had opinions on that whole movement, and they stayed home because of the COVID threat. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't address the issue, but it keeps them alive. What we're finding now, roughly, John Miner said, strength and honor, knightly virtues are needed now more than ever. That is true. I'm going to get to that because I got a question, and I'm going to ask you because you tend to be no, but the COVID-19 didn't go away. Okay, the virus was still there. People went out and protested, and one had their masks removed in some cases, and many times went out without masks, so it spread. People thought, hey, it's over, we don't need it, so it spread. They failed to appreciate the threat and take reasonable measures. John is saying, I'm a knight of the Masonic virtues. I believe in the old code and follow the teaching. Good. We need honorable men holding the line. As you know, many of you have been following, certainly John, Glenn knows, and I'm not sure who the third person watching is, but thank you for watching. I was involved in the SCA. Knew a lot of as John would talk, knights in the SCA, totally separate from the Masonic orders. We're gonna keep, I'm not getting into that. That's a whole different ballpark. But these are people who would be part of what essentially is a historical recreation / LARP. That LARP part sometimes offends people, but they are taking on alternate names, and there's a ranking system, etc. So there are some LARP aspects. My point is, I went on and I heard the whole time people speaking, much like John is right now, about strength, about honor, about defending the weak. And what I am watching is to see who stands up for that. Not just in that group, in this organization, not just in that organization. In general, I am watching, and I encourage you to, going all the way back to mindfulness and threat assessment, watch who says what now, who does what now. Because you're going to find, in my opinion, some people will shock and amaze you. In times such as these, true heroes do rise, and we just kind of have to hold the line for the greater folks among us. But there will great many people who will be proven false of their own claims. And that saddens me. But the trick is, remember them. Watch, my friends. Tactically, just like when you're watching somebody fight to learn their tells, watch who believes what, who shows what. Absolutely. John, you're right. John said even the doctors are saying the virus is not over, which Fauci said it best. Why are we talking about second wave? We haven't gone through the first yet. There's need to self-protect and isolate yourself. Isolate others from yourself. And that's what I've had to do. That's why I'm doing weekly live streams instead of training my students and colleagues and fighting. And I miss it dearly. But I will not endanger their lives by being a vector for whatever is down here. And I will not allow others the option to make a poor choice and become a vector down here. Steve Clausen says only real heroes are dead. I'm going to vehemently, passionately, and from the bowels of my soul disagree. Because that borders on nihilism, and nihilism is my absolute antithesis. There are great people who walk among us, and destiny, all people are equal, but there will always be greater and lesser folk. That's a little confusing and almost contradictory, but it's also true. Now, me, I'm the guy who coined the phrase, fat civilians against stolen valor. You know what I mean? All I have is, what's left between my ears to try to do good with and a bit of heart behind it, both of which seem to be failing and porous at these days. But we have to encourage the best in ourselves and in others, because the entire world right now, 2020 is one big middle finger to humanity saying, you can't breathe. You can't. John Miner says, being an EMT, I lived through this virus as a sickness. Heroes are still here and performing every day. Sorry, 2 replies at once. No, you're fine, John. But 2020 is a big middle finger to humanity saying, you can't breathe. You can't come together peacefully. You can't be better than you are. The masses don't have hope against the systems. You can't stand against the climate. You can't stand, lies pouring out of many sources. And all we can do, those who have the fortitude of spirit, is kind of root ourselves, man. We have to put our feet down and look at it and say, no, this is wrong. There is still hope. And if I can't find the hope, if I look around and the entire world is darkness, it is the obligation of the capable to make some kind of light. 1,000, 1,000,000 people may sit and curse and shake their fists at the darkness. It takes one person to find some kind of light, something, some spark of hope. And I will always seek that. And I think we should too. I know this is a bit off topic, but we've got a great conversation, so I don't really care. Steve said there are no heroes, and to it, there's the heroes are all dead. I think there is a belief to that, in that you can't live expecting the heroes to save you. So you have to find, a part of you to be some tiny shred of a hero. Again, we're not all going to be equal. We're not all going to be able to do massive things, write laws or win battles, or sometimes the only thing you can do is smile when you don't want to, just to give a little more light to somebody else. And I will hazard to say that might be a form of heroism. Mild, tiny. But my man Gandalf and I both believe that the actions of the small, more than anything, the little day-to-day things, are what hold evil at bay. And I'm paraphrasing. Entire races are being downtrodden. This was to be corrected in the 60s. It has not been. We are the cure to move forward. If not, our children and grandchildren will suffer as a whole. That's what John Miner said. And yeah, the racial inequity is part of it. I am surprised. I know a lot of people were in a lot of places who have similar knowledge bases to yours. It would have been interesting to see coordination, and I did not see anyone rise to that. But so you see hero as a posthumous. Steve Clausen said, "I believe in a difference between heroes who have sacrificed everything and great people who are making a difference." Point. So you see heroes as the honored fallen. Heroes are solely the trappings of those who fall to do the right thing, to do what was needed. It's an interesting definition, and we may just be, trotting the world of semantics a bit. It's possible, but whatever you call people, I think right now we must seek empowerment in the face of despair. And not unjustified. You have to put in the hours. You don't. People aren't just born strong. They may have the capacity, but if they don't work it, they will lose it, and they'll never meet their potential. So you have to find what your strength is, and you have to use it. And knowing that about yourself is part of the mindfulness that has been the whole topic of tonight's discussion. And I think people get confused in what strength is. People get confused in what the definition of power is: the ability to affect change, irregardless of the will of others. Interesting. Regardless of the will of others. What change? I think the key to most power that matters is power over self. To affect the change that maybe you don't even necessarily want. Powerful act. The man who can control himself has more power than the man who can control an army. I think that's another Sun Tzu. Big fan. That's what we need to do. And that's what I do. That's what the guild, in part, it's one of the sidelines, is making people more empowered. And peace is a hard choice. Limited response is a hard choice. It's almost unnatural to the animalistic side of us. And yet, that is the mental root of calibration, isn't it? When you learn to calibrate a shot, when you're fencing, you're learning to throw with speed, precision, accuracy, and control. John says, being a patriot guard rider, I see heroes being laid to rest and those who've returned here from mine. I also those who served and been forgotten, they walk among us daily. Yeah. I grew up in the company of veterans, and I grew up in the company of heroes. Most of them did not realize they were. I find the people who fly the flag of heroism, grandeur, usually aren't that. They may have done something important for whatever reasons, but heroism seems wasted and lost on them. There's a humility that runs parallel, and there's no state of humanity more humble than those who have passed, because they can't speak directly on their deeds. They can't defend or condemn anything or anyone. They've moved on. But the deeds tell a story. That's why history is so important. And I think if we understand it and we go beyond ourselves, we're mindful of what others are capable of, we can find sometimes a glimmer, a hope of what we can be capable of. John Miner says, there are those who put their lives on the line daily, protesters, police, military, fire. Has seen them all get spit upon, but they are the ones making a difference. Some do. Maybe even the majority. I do believe that with great power comes great responsibility. Yes, I pulled the Ben Parker. I dropped the Spider-Man in the middle of the serious conversation because it's one of the most valid bits of writing ever conceived. And that's because there is there is perspective, there is knowledge, and that comment. And so if you have the ability with the powers of someone like the police to restrict liberty, to through defense, uh enact violence upon people, enact death upon people, they have to be held to the highest possible standards of professionalism, be reviewed, be watched. And if anyone is uncomfortable with a standard, it is incredibly necessary. And they need to be watched, because that's what we want for everybody. And I support the police, but I hold them to a standard. Just like I support doctors, but I hold them to a standard. I support a lot of people, but I, at the same time, hold them to, at hope, an equivalent standard of responsibility for their actions. Now, John said, I am probably the eldest here and have seen and lived through more than the youngest. I'm not pulling the age card, but I have knowledge and experience others younger might have. First off, John, you are not in any way, shape, or form the eldest in this particular conversation. Glenn has you beat by at least 10 years. So there is some perspective. And you are right in that you have a lot of experience and time, but be hesitant to draw that, because what's happened of late is such a fragmented. In the same timeline, the experiences of people are so radically different at different levels that we have to all, myself included, be cautious and not risk devaluing them or allowing ourselves to be devalued simply on the basis of age. That was something I encountered a lot in the SCA, and I will say that was one of the single biggest reasons recruitment numbers were dropping. And I can say that comfortably from my position because I'm no longer part of it, but I did observe that. Now, that being said, I respect your opinion, I respect your experience, and I respect what you've seen. And because you have that, because at times you've had power, I hold you to higher standards than I hold other people, because I believe you've earned that. It's like Steve, I hold to very high standards because he's done things. Glenn, in the very different fields, different travel, I hold to certain standards. It's interesting and it's intriguing to put that out there. But right now, you're also... I'm hearing things I never heard before from people, or, less, that are going on. And I tend to trust what I see, what I see, what I hear. Not what I'm told. I mean, I factor that, but I understand that it needs to be balanced. Now, on a Marshall field, absolutely, John. And where this is why I would love to get Steve Clausen and John Miner in a room. I would love to put a bunch of knife trainers and tumble pads. John Miner says all professionals need to be held to standards of their profession and not to be forgiven of the transgressions when not holding those standards. Absolutely. Now, this is where it gets interesting with police. I believe that there is a hesitance to enforce certain levels of responsibility because the unintended ramifications. What do I mean? If a police officer does something wrong and gets arrested, okay, even if they are sentenced as a civilian, the response in jail would not be the same as the civilians. They are more likely to be targeted and injured or killed. That's why things work different. So I think there's a hesitance to that. Now it's ironic because as the militarization of police and elevated response has happened, I believe since 9/11 especially, when the police went from a serve and protect mentality to a sort of first line of defense against terrorism and a militarization, the role changed, and we started to become more of the police took on more of a almost a warden, a prison warden on an open field setting. It got different. I think part of the reason we have such a cycle on that topic of brutal excess and then complete counter disregard in criminality is there's no stagger. If somebody really believes that any altercation will get them killed with the police, no, should they be criminal? No, we're good. We're saying now, obviously, but if you're doing something, the law should still be mitigated. And for some people, it has been believed and possibly condoned that is a death sentence, and that's what these protests are about. We've lost a balance in this country. We've lost a Glenn said, "Who polices the police, and how are the police policed? We can thank the Patriot Act for changing the rules." There's a lot of complex, high-end stuff, legal matters like the Patriot Act, like Citizens United, some other laws that are beyond my comfortable understanding to present. That's not where I can live. That's not where I feel right engaging. What I feel right engaging, what I feel right talking about, is at a very personal level. Groups are problematic because groups, almost as a rule, override the individual. It's a compromise so that it benefits all, but there's always a point of override. And I'm fascinated by the individual, what the individual can do, because in all things I keep the same end. I'm very consistent philosophically. I'm not a rebel. I'm not a rebel rouser. I'm not about organized defeat. I'm about taking an individual one at a time and let's make you slightly happier, healthier, better. Make you stronger. Make your world, one person, a little less dark. And if I can accomplish that, my focus moves to another and another and another, sometimes multiple times, but it's not looking at people as just a group. And that's part of what the Guild's about. The Guild was made for a few things. One, to instruct a simple, adaptable style where a person can find their individual way of Western martial arts for whatever reason they're studying it. Preserve the history, physical prowess, the sporting aspect, whatever. All that. To be a liaison. Okay? The Guild is meant to be a liaison where somebody like John Miner, who's a SCA heavy aficionado, heck of a fencer, can talk to Steve Clausen, who's a karambit enthusiast. You guys can both talk to, through us, Marco, Sword Sage, Chinese sword enthusiast. Talk to Al, a collegiate fencing enthusiast. And through the methodology, rules, and vocabulary I've set up, Rosetta Stone, where multiple styles can discuss and build each other up as a sort of network. That's what I do. The third is very, very different. I avidly and I actively seek out the people who I think, could benefit, who maybe have become downtrodden in life, who need confidence, who need a new way of seeing themselves and seeing others. And I try to give them that. When I took up fencing, I took it up in part, to gain personal power, not necessarily over others. Although I never wanted to be as afraid as I was, or as angry as I was before I did. Came in with a lot of baggage that I dealt with because it was a means. It was a philosophical, physical transformation to get me from where I was to where I need to be. Right now, John Miner's talking about essentially racial equity, and I agree with it. And don't believe that anyone should be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Period. Hard stop. So I'm hard stop. That's all that needs to be said there. But, and honestly, if I thought anybody was involved in my group who wasn't able to take that step, they wouldn't be involved in my group. I'd bounce them because I have no tolerance for that level of duplicity. I don't have that level of hatred. Unless they were coming to me to try to get past it, I don't want that kind of poison around. And I watch. I know people in my social groups who are racists or religious zealots, I guess is how, or are anyists. They have a problem with somebody because of their gender or their gender identification or any of that. I don't have time for that. That's not my business. I believe the world, if you put out that kind of negativity, the world will put it right back at you. I am not karma's hand. But I am going to try to be a footstool. If I could be one thing in the world around me, it would be a footstool for the people who just can't reach that next step. Be it fencing, be it, physicality, be it confidence, be it hope. I want, and it's my passion, to be, if I've done anything in this world, if I've done any good in my almost 40 years being here, I'm approaching 39. And it's not that I'm pushing back now. I'm still here. I didn't expect to live this long by any standard, and I've earned every gray hair, many of them donated by my wife. But I want, if I could have my druthers. I'm not worried about wealth, certainly not worried about fame or popularity. Have you seen this? No, not going to happen. But if I can say, I helped a few people, they got one notch further, I've done some good. I tell people I don't want to be, the hero who saves the day. I'll be happy to be the guy who helps you get through a day. And I use, almost mercilessly, ruthlessly, any means necessary to accomplish that. And yes, we are talking philosophically, and I think that's part of the guild. John says, I would love to meet all of them I would love to meet all of them on the field over coffee, philosophical or martial. Good. Yeah. I have a good bunch of people, and someday when this pandemic is subsided, I'm going to set up some kind of event. I don't know. I don't think it will be public. I think it will be an invitation only. but I will set up something where I can reach out to people like you, to people like Glenn, to people like Steve, to Trelena, uh, Rachel, to Steve Augusto, who's my patron who helps keep this funded and helps me keep the roof lights on, metaphorically. To Al, to Marco, to all my former students, to my colleagues. I would love to get a get together and have this wonderful bunch of people able to get together like we used to, and have fires and conversations and sparring matches, and because to me, fencing, whatever form it is, knife, sword fighting, whatever, sparring it, whatever, is at best conversation. And it's a conversation that can be had with respect. It can be had interestingly, and everybody can grow from it. Because it shouldn't just be about, yeah, I beat you. What did you learn? Huh. Now, if you had to work for it and you're smart enough to go, wow, I have to work on this, you've learned something. If they beat you and you can figure out why, you've learned something. That's the matter. I'm not. I used to host a tourney, an actual, we're going to have a prize tourney once a year. Why? People wanted it. Why not more often? Because it's not what I'm about. It's an aspect. Learning against people is an aspect, but it's not the priority. And yeah, John, I know your beliefs. I know your passions. We are well acquainted, unless you've done some kind of massive 180 in the last, roughly 10 years since we talked heavily. Because, yeah, it's been almost that long. Yeah, I know where you stand. I know where Steve stands. I know where Glenn stands. I know where most of my people, through whatever connection, stand. It's watching you guys interact that's interesting. A few years ago, there was a practice. It was actually held at Steve's house. It's one of my favorite practices of all time. Because you know what I did? Very little. You get lazy in your old age, Nick? No. I came out of his house. And I looked out, and there was some open-handed stuff going on, way off in the field there. There was, I think, a little Klee scream-a-stick action, some knife fighting, straight-up fencing, just going. And I looked out, and pairs, people discussing. It was like a free-range college of combat and discussion. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Oh, there are so many more. I'm not dropping, because folks like Jim, I would love for you to be able to spar with Jim Robertson and I miss him, but Chris Schmeberg, hell of a fencer. You would have loved him. You guys have similar reach. Amanda, yeah. But there are people who I've helped and they've moved on. There are people who stay. There are people who are only alive in my heart. And I hope that that's enough. But someday, my friends, there'll be joy in Nottingham again. But I don't want to, we're getting to the last 10 minutes of my 2-hour broadcast. I don't want to end on so mellow, sorry, my camera, so dark content. Well, recommend these. Product recommendation. Fisker scissors. I mentioned why from a combative improvised weapon standing, but these are just the best scissors. Like, these are great for for uh, day-to-day work. They're just great scissors. This pair usually cuts green onions. It spends most of its time cutting popsicles and green onions these days. But this was on my belt at Home Depot constantly. John Miner said, Manda, he misses you. I'll tell her you miss her. And two words on comrades where I stand, house camera. Yeah. House camera. That that is a phrase I have not heard in a long, long time, John. And that is a conversation for a far another day. We I'm gonna pull this back, give a bit of a wrap up. First off, thank you everybody who has spoken, who has commented, who follows, because right now we're not getting a lot of turnover. I don't normally get this philosophical part of my speech impediment, but I think it needed to be done, and I wanted to work through some concepts with you, and I don't know if I accomplished anything. This may have been 2 hours of me whistling into the wind, but I think it's so crucial that we start talking about big ideas like this and why and how it overlaps martial arts, how it overlaps Western martial arts, what it means. Where there's a point where faith, where martial arts, where logic, where all this intervene, they all entangle, and it's fascinating. And we need, as those educated in some of these settings, to sit down and talk about them, and for the be there to answer questions. And sometimes the best answer is I don't know, because that forces you to think, research, decide, make your best choice, keep moving, then look back and see if it worked. That's a form of mindfulness that isn't discussed enough. I will be probably next week much more on schedule, on par. We'll get back to the manual. We need to talk a bit more about lying tactics, I recall, and the the cloak video is still coming. I know I keep putting it off, guys. I'm sorry. I've had some physical limitation stuff that have necessitated me. I won't do a video demonstrating a technique that I am not physically up to do properly. Just because I can make it work for me is not necessarily how I want to teach it to you guys. Yeah. I do. I thank you for coming out, watching these videos. Next week, I will be back with episode 16. And like I said, it'll be back to normal. If you like what I'm doing, please like, please share, please support this channel. I might be getting lag in my responses just because the storm is starting to pick up outside, and I'm watching my my image blur from lack of internet. That happens. I hope this is still broadcasting. But if you like what I'm doing, as I said, like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss things. I will be on at least every week. If I can get some stuff together, I'll do some recorded stuff soon. It's just fighting the good fight has taken a lot out of me lately. And I've been helping people, and that has taken time and energy out of what I would do for this. But please realize we are supported by the Simple Sword, which I can't hold up because it went on walkabout. But the Simple Sword by Nicholas Tockard is available through Amazon, and it is still, to the best of my knowledge, free to download if you have Kindle Unlimited. I will try to keep it as part of that deal, as part of my humble way of supporting folks during this pandemic. It gives you something to study, something else to look into, maybe something hopeful. I do have a Patreon, and when I get this video edited, I will have the link to the Patreon like I always do. I am taking. Basically worked through the majority of the book. So I will be taking subjects, suggestions, and as always, questions to be answered later. Please direct them to me. Uh, I want to thank Steve Augusta, my patron. We've lost many of what I had. Many people had to stop supporting financially because of the hardship of dealing with the pandemic. Uh, but if you want to join, it would be appreciated. A buck a month go. That's how I afford the trainers I review, and eventually how I'll afford getting the gear so that I can continue to practice safely because I've both outgrown in the middle and simply worn out most of my gear that by loaning it out to too many people. Sucker. It's written right here. But we thank you. I'm gonna call it a little short because I'm running out of juice today. I'm sorry. I do. Oh, other people want to thank Steve Augusta. I want to thank the lovely Ren Contessa. She couldn't be on today, but she may be listening or will be catching the review. I understand her work situation requires it, and that's fine. She's been an incredible support, and I'm still hoping that as her world improves, some of her planned projects can come to fruition because I'm excited about that. Well, thanks Steve Clausen for some opportunities he's thrown my way. I also want to put a huge shout out to Terraform Comics. Terraform Comics is the comic company ran by Mr. Luke Stone, my partner, as I develop the Hybrids RPG. Please to look up that. I think I have the link for it. He had to break off and start his own company, so it's been a very strenuous time for a lot of people involved. Hence, this week being a little less than usual. Other than that, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, support your local swordmaster.